Hello, good morning. I'm Lisa Stark with Education Week, and I am here with John Bridgeland, someone who is intensely interested in getting kids across that high school finish line. He's one of the movers behind the Grad Nation campaign to increase high school graduation rates to 90% by the year 2020. John is also the founder and CEO of Civic Enterprises. Your firm works with companies, nonprofits, foundations, governments to try to sort of push the envelope to reach innovative solutions, right?
That's right.
To get beyond the status quo.
Yes.
And one of the areas you work in is education.
That's right.
So let me talk about this report. It was your group, Civic Enterprises, and the Everyone Graduate Center at Johns Hopkins University, that put this report together.
Right.
It's your 8th annual report.
Yes, it is.
Looking at how we're doing on high school graduation. So
Right.
how are we doing on high school graduation?
So this is our 8th annual update to the nation on our progress and challenge and meeting a goal that 4 U.S. presidents have set,
Wow.
which was a 90% high school graduation rate goal by a date certain. The first 3 presidents missed it, and a lot of us were tired of seeing these goals be set and deadlines come and go and be missed. We had 30 years of flatlining graduation rates in this country. And finally, at the turn of the century, the country started to get organized. The good news is since 2001, 2.8 million more students have graduated from high school rather than dropping out, with huge consequences to them as individuals, our society, our economy, even our civic life.
Right.
And the good news is also about half the states are on track
To
to
reach
meet
this 90%
goal. The bad news is the nation for the second year in a row is off pace, and we need to nearly double the pace of progress to reach this goal.
Yeah, I read in one report, I think that you did also back in December, that you need to graduate 300,000 more students a year.
That's right.
To reach this goal. And you likened that to 3 Rose Bowls, for
yes,
example,
we did.
right? So just to get a sense of how big that is.
It sounds so big, but when you break it down into chunks and you look at the fact that there are 12% of the schools in the United States are these low graduation rate schools.
Okay.
And that's if we focus our energy there and we look at the states that are making success, the districts that are making progress, and then those areas that aren't. It's actually a targeted and fixable problem.
Now, let me just go back for a second. President Obama, I remember, touted the graduation rate, 83.2% nationwide, right?
Yes.
And that's the highest it's been
Ever.
Ever.
Yeah.
So obviously there has been improvement. That's the good news.
Right.
The question is, and one of the things your report addresses is, how accurate is that number?
Yeah.
I mean, can we believe that number? Because we have seen stories about districts that have maybe been gaming the system, not counting everybody to try to make their grad rates look better than they are.
Yeah.
So what did you guys find about that
So we actually
number?
dug in, and there are 3 issues. One is measurement error. There are about a dozen issues that the National Center for Education Statistics has identified that might affect the numbers, mostly at the school and the district level. Things like how do schools define an incoming 9th grader?
Okay.
When is 4 years up? Some schools may, move it into the summer or even early into the next year. There's also a bit of a homeschooling loophole. We've seen in some areas of the country where schools, all of a sudden, in the junior year of a student's life, they're moved into a homeschool, but the transcripts show that they really were likely to drop out. And since there isn't the accountability in homeschooling,
So
we
maybe
worry
they're
a
not
little bit
getting
about
counted.
that.
Okay.
But the good news is we've done deeper analysis of what does the cohort look like, and has there been any gaming of a significant scale to affect the national numbers? And we think not. The other issue has been, well, are we just producing diploma mills, cranking out these diplomas that don't mean very much because we've been lowering the bar?
Well, not just lowering the bar, but I guess I read somewhere that there are 95 different types of high school diplomas.
Right.
So what about that?
Yeah,
Do
so
they mean
there
something?
are examples like the Grand Canyon diploma in Arizona that doesn't have the level of requirements of a regular diploma. But we actually did an analysis of following the National Center of Education Statistics, which showed that in the very era where high school graduation rates were increasing, in most states across the country, what was required to graduate and the exit exams were also on the rise. So that was very encouraging to us. We also looked at what's the relationship between increasing high school graduation rates and post-secondary enrollment. And one area that's been very hopeful to us is that African Americans and Latinos have actually been driving gains in high school graduation rates, in turn, their post-secondary enrollment has doubled or nearly doubled in the same
fabulous.
period.
But let me ask you about that, and I'm just going to remind people that we're talking with John Bridgeland of Civic Enterprises. I'm Lisa Stark with Education Week, and we're talking about a new report looking at how we're doing on high school graduations.
Yeah.
You talk about great gains by African Americans, Hispanic, Latino students, but they're still behind.
They are.
And I found when you look into the subgroups, it seems to me that equity seems to be a really big concern and a driver of the fact that you may not reach this goal.
That's right. In fact, I mean, to reach the 90% goal, to some extent, we've gone the easier path of reaching a lot of students who we knew could make it over the line. Now we have to go. I was just in Cleveland in the last 2 days. They've gone from about a 50% high school graduation rate to 17 percentage point increase up to about 67, 68. That's tremendous progress in a short period of time. But still, a large number of their schools are these dropout factories, places where kids, unfortunately, see a lot of students around them who aren't going to graduate. And so we know, for example, that low-income students are about half of the cohort in 2015, but they're 68% of the non-graduates.
Wow.
African
so
Americans,
clearly,
and African Americans and Latinos are 38% of the cohort, but they're more than 50% of the non-graduates. Students with disabilities, in some states the gap is as high as 20-some percentage points between students with disabilities grad rates and their peers. So we have a long way to go in terms of creating a more equitable education system.
So you need to target these groups, and you need to target those schools, the 12% of schools that you're talking about that are low graduation schools. So how do you do that? I mean, how do you move forward to make sure that that's what gets done and how it gets done?
Yeah, one interesting development, we now have devolution under the Every Student Succeeds Act.
Right.
And what's encouraging in it, 7% of Title I funds are now going to be available for districts and states that identify their low graduation rate high schools, and then in turn emerge with plans and evidence-based plans to reform them. The good news is we have examples all across the country of, Tacoma and Fresno, had universally these low-performing schools. They turned them around over a period of time.
What's the answer?
One interesting component. One is creating. Everywhere I go, the superintendents and principals and teachers say we created an every student counts culture. We moved away from estimates and averages and tracking, the average daily attendance, to knowing who was in school and who wasn't, who these students are, what they need in the way of supports, what's the relationship between what they're learning and what they want to be in life, and going all out with good data, strong supports, early warning systems.
That's what I was going to say. So it sounds like early warning systems, student-centered learning, basically.
Project-based learning,
right.
And social and emotional development. There's this new commission created. We were in Cleveland gathering, and we went into the Cleveland Public Schools, and they've actually made social and emotional development at the center of understanding how to educate children and drawing on the latest science on child development and learning. One example is they've moved away from suspending and expelling students, which sends a signal, you don't belong here. You're not loved and respected. Your discipline is a lifetime fatal flaw, to planning centers that look to understand what's causing the challenge. How can we help you take responsibility for addressing it? And how can we make sure we keep you in school and keep you on track to learn?
How concerned are you with ESSA, with the sort of emphasis going back to the states, the authority? How concerned are you about whether that will cause some slippage or people to take their eye off the ball?
That's where we're going to be really active with the governors and the chiefs, because we know from the accountability era that actually requiring states and districts to set clear graduation rate goals and achievement goals and then being accountable over time for meeting them had a measurable impact on our progress to date. And the last thing we want to see is, a grad rate loophole or states or districts, slipping away, moving away from really taking this issue seriously and ensuring every student has the opportunity to succeed and to finish.
And you and I, you mentioned to me earlier that governors are obviously very engaged with this.
Yes.
You want to bring them all together again.
We do.
Is that right?
Our big idea is actually
these little summits, huh? Okay.
Well, action forcing summits that actually are serious, put forth policy and practice and innovation and based on science and evidence in a way that It makes a long-term commitment that will transcend their term as governors. And I think that's what's positive about this campaign. It's cross-administration, cross-sector, cross-party. And so we're calling for a next-generation governor summit. President Bush 41 convened all 50 governors at Williamsburg in 1989. It had a good effect. It ushered in an era of accountability. Governor Mark Warner convened the governors in 2005. It led to the common calculation of graduation rates. So from Akron to Albuquerque, you could actually tell how we were doing. We think a next generation summit that focuses on how are states and districts closing the grad gap, but then how is that translating into gains in post-secondary education?
Going on to
and
college
the employment
or
pathways,
wherever.
Whether it's career and technical education or four-year degree and beyond.
So you had mentioned to me that the U.S. has tracked grad rates since 1870.
It's true,
okay,
post-Civil War.
So now I guess it's time to really get serious.
Yes, so we tracked it from 1870 through A Nation at Risk. And A Nation at
Right.
Risk, one of the hopeful signs in that very gloomy report was we've made progress in boosting high school graduation rates. Compulsory school age laws, post-World War II economy, a lot of things are behind that. But then we flatlined for 30 years. With more than 1 million young people dropping out of high school with big consequences to them. And so it was really the turn of the century, led by a suite of Southern governors, actually, who saw the relationship between high school graduation and successful workforces in their states. And then President George W. Bush, President Obama, governors, the NGA, the chiefs have all been our partners, and community-based nonprofits with fabulous superintendents on the ground across the country. The problem is it's not universal. And the problem is about half the states are off pace. So we've got to put on the gas.
You've got some work to do.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to ask you one last question. We're talking to John Brickland here, and he is with Civic Enterprises. You've got your new report. What makes you optimistic? What makes you pessimistic?
What makes me optimistic is we actually can point to areas of the country that have closed the low-income gap, have closed the racial and ethnic gap, are actually having more success at graduating students with disabilities.
So there is a path forward.
There is a path forward. And we also see schools and districts following the evidence and learning from one another. What gives me concern and alarm is that there are way too many states and districts that are languishing, and the students in those areas are languishing. And that's why one of the purposes of today's report and our follow-on efforts, we've had 205 summits across the United States that have prompted local plans of action to understand their challenge and to address them. And interestingly, public media has played a big part in that, using its convening power through American Graduate to bring key stakeholders together to embrace the challenge. So that gives me hope, too, that we can, with a next generation summit and with efforts at all levels, including still the federal level, that I hope will help keep states and districts accountable as this power is devolved. I think we can continue to make progress.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa.
Also, I should mention that on edweek.org, you can see a full article by Catherine Gewirtz on this report, lays out what they found, what you need to know about it. So check that out. I'm Lisa Stark with Education Week, and I hope everyone has a great day.